I knew I was about to face the toughest test of my life. On this mission, I would either become a master thief like my ancestors before me, or fail and allow my family name to bite the dust.
Sly Cooper is a series that I would have loved when I was a kid. But unfortunately back then, as we all know, you have to rely on Christmas and birthdays, maybe the odd confirmation or communion to get new games, and you're basically stuck to the games that either A, your family buy you, or B, you saved up enough money to buy yourself. This game came out in 2002, and back then I was playing my N64 and PS1, because I didn't get a PS2 until 2004 when I got FIFA 03 and the Spider-Man tie-in movie game. And just as I said, I was relegated to the games that people would buy for me, and luckily the majority of the games I got were usually pretty good. So back then I was playing Spyro, I was playing Crash, I was playing Ratchet and Clank, so Sly Cooper fell under the radar for me. And let's be honest, as much as I love the Sly series, and I did get into it later, as mascot platformers go, Sly is one of the most forgotten of the really high quality ones, because when most people think of early 2000s or late 90s 3D platforms, they obviously think of Mario, Crash, Spyro, Jak and Daxter, and Sly is probably somewhere just below all of them in memorability. But now in 2024, there's no better time to talk about Sly 1 because it's coming to PS5 through the PlayStation Classics. So does this game hold up, and more importantly, does it deserve a permanent spot in my collection? Now this is a first for the channel. This is the first game that I'm playing digitally because I don't own it physically. Over here I have Sly running on the PS2 through a hard drive, but for the purpose of this video I played it on the PS3 through the HD collection so I could platinum the game, which I did. And I want to start off talking about first entries in 3D platformers, because when we go back to thinking of all of our favourite 3D platformers like Spyro, Crash, Jak and Daxter, Crash 1 is obviously a technical marvel on PS1. Now obviously I wasn't around for that, I was born in 1998. But looking back and reading through interviews, you see that Crash 1 was an absolute technical marvel and everyone was amazed at what Naughty Dog could do. But as a game, it's slightly unbalanced. I personally think it's too hard and I don't really find it that fun. Crash 2 and 3 later improved the formula in many ways, and Crash 3 is one of my favourite platformers of all time. And then you go to Spyro. Spyro 2 is my favourite 3D platformer of all time. And Spyro 1, while I enjoyed it, was just, you know, a bit basic. Totally fine, but nothing really to write home about. And then I think you start to buck the trend in the PS2 era, because then you start to get Jak and Daxter, which I believe is the best Jak game, and also, once again, as Naughty Dog do, it was a technical marvel on the PS2. No loading screens, completely open world. That's one of my favourite 3D platformers of all time, one of my favourite games of all time, in fact. And then Ratchet and Clank 1 was an amazing game that I still love to this day, even though it doesn't have the likes of strafing, and there's certain things that don't age as well, but that game is still fantastic. And Sly 1 continues that trend of it, yes, being slightly more basic compared to Sly 2 and 3, because Sly 2 was absolutely phenomenal, but this game is way better than any first entry in the PS1 era platformers. I mean, I've played it here on the PS2 for a short while. I know I was playing the HD version, but the game just looks absolutely fantastic, and it's due to that cel-shaded art style, which, let's be honest, we don't really see that often in games, and cel-shaded graphics just hold up so well regardless of what generation they're on. And what this game does right is that it captures that Saturday morning cartoon vibe, where you could see that Sly Cooper could work as a cartoon, because the cast of characters is just so colourful. You have Sly, who's, you know, smooth talking, slick and suave. Then you have Bentley, who's the very typical nerd, kind of has a bit of a Professor Frink air about him. And then you have Murray, who's just this goofy pink hippo that, you know, punches first and never really ask questions, because I don't really think he has enough brain cells to ask questions. And it's just that core cast of characters of them three and how entertaining it is to hear them talk to one another that just creates this feeling that I know that if I played this game when I was a kid, I would have absolutely loved Sly, Bentley and Murray, and I would have just been so far up this series' ass. But I just wasn't, because I didn't own the games. The only time I ever played Sly Cooper was, I believe, on the Ratchet and Clank 3 disc. There was a Sly 2 demo where I think you could play the opening to the Paris level of Sly 2. And I played that a lot, and I loved it. But for whatever reason, I just never played the series. And then, judging by my trophies, in 2014, I bought the collection on PS3 to play it. And I started playing Sly 1, and it just didn't click with me. Again, judging by my trophies, I got through like the first world and a half, put it down, and then because of that, I didn't bother with Sly 2 or 3. And then later on, when I got a PS Vita during college, I re-downloaded them because this was cross-buy, which was, just a fantastic system that Sony used to have on their handheld and home console. I skipped Sly 1 because I remembered it not being very good. And then I went straight to Sly 2 and 3 and played Sly 4, and they're all fantastic games. And now going back to Sly 1, as I was going through, I played the first 2 worlds in one sitting, and I just thought to myself, I was completely wrong about this game. Yes, it does feel kind of basic, because later on I think Sly 2 kind of captures that almost immersive sim vibe where you have these massive sprawling levels with loads of different interconnecting paths, you have different shortcuts, you have different ways to get around the guards, you have loads of different collectibles to find, and that's why I think Sly 2 is a genuinely fantastic game. And while I still love Sly 1, I wouldn't call it fantastic like I would with Sly 2. And if you don't know anything about Sly 1, it's a stealth action platformer, and it's relatively linear, where some levels kind of remind me almost like a Crash level, where it is the camera is behind you. You have full camera movement, but a lot of the level is the camera will be behind you and you're just progressing on this very linear path. And mechanically, it's not a very deep game. You can jump, you can attack. If you jump and press circle, you will attach to whatever sort of parkour thing you're doing, if you're shimmying across a ledge, if you're climbing up a rope. But one thing that I really have to hit home on is that for a first entry in a series, it's just fantastic how well they made this parkour system. Now, there's a couple of times where you will press circle and you will glue to a target that you didn't really want to, but the majority of the time, you jump, you press circle, you will attach to whatever you want to do, you'll shimmy across the ledge, you'll climb up that rope, or you'll swing on that little hook. And it feels really smooth, which is extremely impressive for a first entry in a series. And then as you go along in the game, you unlock new abilities. But one thing that I love is that you can get through the whole game without needing any of these abilities. Eventually, I think the game gives you one more ability, which is this super stealth, where you go invisible and you basically crawl along, and then the guards can't catch you because there's cones of visions of the guards, and once they catch you, they attack you. Or there might be security cameras, and then they'll shoot a drone at you or whatever. But as you go along, you collect these clue bottles, which are essentially the main collectible in the game, where each level could have between 20 and 40 of them, and if you collect all of them, you unlock a safe at the end. And the whole plot of this game is that Sly is part of this long-running family of Thievius raccoons, and they created this book called Thievius Raccoonus. And the 5 bad guys of the game basically killed Sly's dad, left him as an orphan, ripped up all the pages, spread them across the world, and now he's off trying to find them. And as you go through, you read pages from your different ancestors, and they unlock abilities that aren't necessary, but they're just something to kind of, vary up the gameplay a bit. You get one that can slow down time, you get one that can speed up time, which is really useful. And then you get the ones that are kind of maybe they might be useful for speed running if you want to do the time trials, but you get one where you can roll around a very slow Sonic, or do this dive attack. And one thing that I have to say about this game is that it is quite basic. You will be doing the exact same things across 30 or so levels, but they do a lot to vary it up in theme and style and different level layouts that kind of keeps it fresh, because mechanically, as I said, it's not very deep. But one world is set in America, and there's basically this American bulldog that runs a casino, and those levels are all unique because you're running around different casino locations, you're kind of taking down his operation. And then when you get into the boss fights is where I think this game really shines. Not mechanically, because again, I think this is quite basic, and in general, I think 3D platformer bosses are, all pretty basic, but where they stand out are their designs. And each one of these characters are memorable. Now, a lot of their names I don't remember, but their character designs are extremely memorable. You have this frog that has a massive top hat that basically became a pirate. You have Mugshot, who is this big bulldog that runs around on his arms. And then you have the final boss, which I guess spoilers for Sly Cooper. And his name is Clockwork, and he is this very menacing metal bird that has a really cool backstory, because he's kind of this evil overlord of all of these evil people. But as you go along, Sly realizes that in the background of all the pictures of all of his ancestors, Clockwork is in the back. And it's this ever-present villain that has been hunting Sly's family since the dawn of time. And I just find that so cool. You can see the silhouette of the bird in the background of all the pictures. And then he has a monologue on the final boss fight where he's basically saying that his drive for killing Sly's family is the thing that's kept him alive for all these hundreds or thousands of years. And it's just cool. There's an undeniable charm to this game in how every level starts with Sly Cooper in whatever the name is, and it's like a splash screen from a Scooby-Doo cartoon, and how every interaction with a boss just feels cool and memorable, and how the game looks, in how slick the animations are, and how unique all the character designs. There's an undeniable bar of quality in this game, and I know Sly gets a lot of love, and Sucker Punch as of recently have gotten a lot of love, but seeing Sucker Punch take elements from all of their previous titles and improve on them in every single new title is just fantastic. Like when you go from Sly to Infamous, you can see the parkour system that they did so much to work on in Sly 1, 2 and 3 go into an open world in Infamous, and then in the later Infamous games. And I'm guilty of this too, but I think up until Ghost of Tsushima, not a lot of people gave Sucker Punch the love that they deserve, because they truly are an absolutely fantastic developer. After playing Sly 1 now, all I want to do is go and play Sly 2, 3 and 4, because Sly 1 is a fantastic game. I don't know what I was thinking back in the day when I put this game down. It's brilliant. As a first entry in a platformer series, it's one of the best ones out there, because there's always like a couple of caveats with these first entries. Crash 1 is too hard, Spyro 1 is too basic. But then you get Sly, which, yes, it is basic, but it just has this quality to it that makes it stand above the rest. And the fact that they got this parkour system down so well in the first entry is just fantastic. And obviously, as I said, all of those little bits of charm with the funny characters and the interesting boss designs, it's just this one package of a game that's so well crafted, and it's so contained, and it's like, there's a game that you can platinum in 8 hours and you will have a fantastic time doing it. That quality extends to the pacing of the game, because a lot of platformers, especially in their later iterations, rely too much on minigames. You know, Spyro 2 had a good mixture of minigames and normal levels. And then I think Spyro 3 leaned a bit too much into it. And then the later Spyro games, like A Hero's Tale, kind of had way too many minigames and kind of side modes and all that. So that kind of got a bit muddy. And Crash kind of did the same. Crash 2, I believe, has a better mixture of normal levels to minigames than Crash 3, but I prefer Crash 3. And then Crash 4, or Wrath of Cortex, I guess, now, as you know, Crash 4 is an actual game. Wrath of Cortex leaned way too much into all the gimmicky levels, like the ball and the mine carts and driving the car and all that. So, you know, these games kind of fall into those traps. But Sly 1 doesn't do that, and I understand it's the first entry in a series, but every single time I got one of the levels that weren't the normal level, I actually welcomed them, because it was a breakup in how sort of basic the loop was in the normal levels. But there's only a couple of styles to these minigame levels, and the shooting ones are good, the twin stick shooter ones are fine as well. But then you get into these turret ones where you're on a turret and you have to leave Murray from one end of the level to the next. And these are just too long, sometimes kind of annoying, because Murray might die randomly, and then you're like, oh, I have to go through all that again. And it was just tedious over anything. It wasn't engaging, it wasn't really fun, it was just kind of a bit tedious. And then when you get into the boss fights, as I said, their designs are fantastic. These boss fights don't mess around, because unless you collect 100 coins or a lucky horseshoe, you die in one hit. And all these bosses have like 3 phases, so you actually do have to get quite good at being able to beat them. Now, they're not like overly difficult, you know, you might die in them 5 or 6 times and eventually you'll get them, but Sly 1 100% deserves a permanent place in my collection. Now, as I said, I don't actually own the game physically, and with the games like this, it's €65 for the Sly trilogy on CEX, which is the main sort of used game store over here in Ireland, and I think I would much rather just wait until I find it. I don't think it will increase in price crazily. Like, maybe if I leave it for a year, it might go up to like 75 or €80, but you know, that's probably just covering inflation, let's be real. So at €65, I'm not like rushing out to buy it physically. I do want to have it physically, and if I ever really just kind of want to own them physically, Sly 1, 2 and 3 on PS2 aren't expensive, so I could just buy them instead of the trilogy. But 100% this game deserves a spot in my collection. On the PS3, it's fantastic. On the PS2, it's still fantastic. It's kind of hard to see. Again, it's in the background, but I will have CRT footage up. But on that PS2, on that CRT, this game looks absolutely stunning. And it just goes to show what cel-shaded graphics and having a stylized art style can do to a game. Because there's some PS2 games that look like absolute ass. Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus is not one of them. This game is brilliant. I beat it in 2 sittings today because I wanted to get this video out. And yeah, great game. I can't wait to play Sly 2, 3 and 4, because I never beat 4, I only beat 2 and 3. But them 2 games are absolutely fantastic, because it's like if you got a 3D platformer and an immersive sim like Dishonored or something, combine them into one game, and there you have Sly 2 and 3. Sly is a fantastic series. Sucker Punch are an underrated developer that make genuinely fantastic games, and I slept on them for a long time because even going back to Infamous, my first experience with Sucker Punch realistically was Infamous on the PS4, which I got as like a pack-in title with my PS4, and I was like, oh, I'm probably not even going to play it. And then I played it, and I was like, holy shit, this game is amazing. Because I played Infamous 1 back in the day, and I hated it. I don't know why, because I went back to Infamous 1 like maybe 6 or 7 years ago, platinumed it, had a fantastic time. Infamous 2 is even better. Well, gameplay-wise, I think the story's a bit worse. And then Ghost of Tsushima is great, but I just haven't beaten it. Sucker Punch are an amazing developer, and I'm so glad that I finally went back to this game, and I'm so glad that a lot of people will be able to re-experience this game on the PS5 now. Hopefully it's a good emulation, but we will see. Thank you everybody for watching. I did loads of videos. Check out whatever video I'm showing here. Do you know what the video's going to be on? What was my last video? It was a collection. I bought a load of games. I spent over €200 on games. I have a lot of games, too many games to play, not enough time, loads of videos to make. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.